Imagine throwing away your organic waste week after week, year after year. In doing so, you are destroying pure gold. Black gold. It is the substance that makes your soil fertile, nourishes your plants, and guarantees your independence. While fertilizer prices explode and supply chains become increasingly fragile, people throw the solution into the trash can every day. An average household produces between 150 and 200 kilos of organic waste annually. This is not just wasted potential, but the active destruction of resources for which you will later pay dearly in the form of synthetic fertilizer. But there is a problem. Most people fail at composting. Stench, flies, rats, weeks of waiting, and finally frustrated abandonment. I have spoken with hundreds of people who told me they tried. They started a pile full of good intentions, but after a few weeks it turned into a stinking, sticky mass. Neighbors complained, swarms of flies arrived, and month after month nothing happened until they finally brought everything to the recycling center in frustration. Yet compost is not a luxury. It is the foundation of functioning self-sufficiency. Today I will show you not just the theory, but the complete system. Step by step and detail by detail, I explain how you can produce compost in record time, without the stench, without the flies, and without the guesswork. It is a system that works because it is based on science and not on hope. If true independence is important to you, and you seek knowledge that actually works, then stay tuned until the end. At the conclusion, everything will come together, and you will understand exactly why these principles make the difference between a stinking pile of waste and valuable humus. You will grasp why most fail and how you can be among the few who master it. Composting is as old as agriculture itself. For millennia, humans have understood that the cycle of life relies on decomposition. In China, composting was documented as early as 4,000 years ago. The Romans wrote detailed instructions, and medieval farmers knew exactly how valuable rotted manure and plant waste were. Every successful civilization was based on fertile soil, and this is created by humus. But in recent decades, we have forgotten what was once self-evident. The Green Revolution of the 1950s and 60s promised us that chemistry was the solution. Synthetic fertilizer would solve all problems, pesticides would eliminate pests, and mechanization would ease the labor. For a while it worked, yields increased, the population grew. But the bill came later. The soil was depleted. The humus content dropped from an original 5 to 10% to under 2%. Erosion increased, and water retention capacity fell. Soils became dependent on permanent fertilization, like a junkie on his drug. We have made ourselves dependent on industrial fertilizers and supply chains that we do not control. Every crisis of recent years has shown how quickly these systems can collapse. Energy prices rise, and with them fertilizer prices, since nitrogen fertilizer is made from natural gas. A war in Eastern Europe, and suddenly a third of global fertilizer production is missing. Transport routes break down, deliveries do not arrive. Anyone who still believes today that everything will always be available in the supermarket is ignoring reality. But those who grow their own food and produce their own compost possess something that no supply shortage can destroy: control, security, and independence. This is not paranoia. This is preparation and wisdom. The problem is not that composting is difficult. The problem is that most people do not know the fundamental principles. They throw everything onto a pile and wonder why it rots instead of decomposing, why it stinks instead of smelling sweet, and why flies come instead of earthworms. The solution lies not in complicated techniques, but in understanding fundamental principles. When you apply these, composting becomes the easiest thing in the world. The first principle is the balance between carbon and nitrogen. Imagine compost like a fire. A fire needs fuel and oxygen in the right mixture. Too much fuel with too little air leads to smoke. That is exactly what happens in compost if you only throw kitchen waste into it. Kitchen waste is green material, rich in nitrogen, moist, and dense. Without a counterpart, it rots anaerobically, meaning without oxygen. This creates the stench of rotten eggs, ammonia, and decay. The counterpart is the brown material, carbon-rich, dry, and structural. Think of dry leaves, straw, small chopped twigs, cardboard, wood chips, or old sawdust. The ratio is crucial. Science tells us that 30 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen is ideal. 30.1 sounds complicated but is simple in practice. A bucket of kitchen waste has a ratio of about 15.1. That's not bad, but not enough. Fresh grass clippings are at 12.1, far too nitrogen-rich. Coffee grounds are at 20.1, which is better but still borderline. Now look at the brown material. Dry leaves are at 60.1, straw at 80.1, wood chips at 100.1 or more, and paper as well as cardboard are over 100.1. If you mix these materials, you get the perfect balance. In practice, this means for every bucket of kitchen waste, you need about 2 to 3 buckets of brown material, measured volumetrically, not by weight. That sounds like a lot, but that is exactly the key. Most use too little brown material and produce a wet, stinking mass. With the right balance, you create a crumbly, earthy structure that smells like forest soil. Let's get specific. Collect as many dry leaves as possible in the fall. Use a leaf rake and fill large bags or build a corner in the garden for storage. A single large tree can provide 30 to 50 bags of leaves, your supply for the whole year. If you don't have your own tree, ask your neighbors. Most are happy if someone picks up the leaves. Use cardboard from packaging. Every delivery is potential brown material. Tear the cardboard into strips about 10 centimeters wide, remove tape and plastic, and the rest can go directly into the compost. You can use sawdust if you have access to a workshop, but be careful. Only use untreated wood. Use sawdust sparingly, maximum 10% of the volume, as it can clump. Wood chips are better because they create structure and decompose more slowly. Straw is excellent and cost-effective. Cut it into 20 to 30 centimeter long pieces so it mixes better. Hay also works, but make sure it doesn't contain seeds unless your compost gets hot enough. This brown material is your insurance against stench and flies. Every time you add kitchen waste, cover it immediately with a 10 to 15 centimeter thick layer of brown material. This layer is a physical barrier. Flies cannot get to the waste, the smell stays inside, and the structure remains airy. The second principle is heat. If you want compost in record time, you must generate temperature. A cold compost takes a year or longer. A hot compost is ready in 6 to 8 weeks. The difference lies in the activity of the microorganisms. To heat a room, a small candle does nothing. The heat evaporates. You need a stove with mass. It is the same with compost. A small pile loses heat too quickly. You need mass, at least 1 cubic meter. 1.5 is ideal. At this size, insulation is created. The microorganisms inside work so intensely that the temperature rises to 50, 60, or even 70 degrees Celsius. What happens at these temperatures? Heat over 50 degrees kills most weed seeds like dandelions or quackgrass. Pathogens die, fungal spores are inactivated, and parasite eggs are destroyed. Simultaneously, the heat accelerates chemical reactions. Decomposition occurs exponentially faster at high temperatures. What takes weeks at 20 degrees happens in days at 60 degrees. Heat is the product of microbial activity. Bacteria release energy during breakdown, 80% of it as warmth. To achieve this heat, you must set up the compost correctly, all at once, not layer by layer over weeks. This is the mistake many make. They build the pile too slowly. Collect material until you have 1 cubic meter, mix green and brown in the right ratio, and set up the pile completely. After 2 to 4 days, thermophilic bacteria take over the work, and the temperature rises rapidly. If you stick your hand in, it is steaming hot. After about a week, the pile sags by 30 to 40%. The temperature drops, and now you must turn it. Turning is critical. Take the pile apart and set it up anew. The outside goes to the inside to the outside. In doing so, you aerate, mix, and redistribute the moisture. The temperature often rises back to 50 degrees afterward. After another 1 to 2 weeks, turn it again. Then let the pile mature. Immature compost can inhibit root growth. In the maturation phase, the pH value stabilizes and nitrogen is converted into a stable form. The third principle is moisture. Water is life, but too much of it is deadly. The golden rule: take a handful of compost and squeeze firmly. Only a few drops should come out, not a stream. It should be like a well-wrung-out sponge. If it is too wet, water displaces oxygen, and anaerobic bacteria create a stench. Cover the compost so it doesn't get soaked during heavy rain. Use a tarp with an air gap, a straw mat, or a thick layer of leaves. In dry summers, you may need to water, but thoroughly, not just on the surface. The fourth principle is aeration. Oxygen decides between decomposition, aerobic, and putrefaction, anaerobic. If it stinks, oxygen is missing. Microorganisms consume it quickly, so aeration is critical. Structural brown material creates cavities that act like air channels. Turning also brings in fresh oxygen. Some use perforated pipes in the pile or compost aerators, rods with folding wings. For most gardeners, however, turning with a pitchfork is the most effective method. The fifth principle is shredding. The larger the surface area in relation to the volume, the faster the decomposition. A whole apple takes months, a pured one only days. Ideally, shred everything to 2 to 5 semi-units. You can cut or briefly blend kitchen waste. Garden waste like perennials or branches should go through a shredder. A shredder transforms bulky waste into valuable material and greatly facilitates mixing. The sixth principle is covering. Open compost invites flies. The solution is simple. Cover every fresh addition immediately with 10 to 15 cm of brown material, soil, or semi-finished compost. This is an odor barrier and physical protection. What belongs in the compost? Good green material includes vegetable and fruit scraps, coffee grounds, tea bags without plastic, and fresh grass clippings in thin layers. Good brown material includes dry leaves, straw, wood chips, cardboard, and crushed eggshells. You should avoid cooked food scraps, meat, fish, as well as oils and fats, as they attract rats and inhibit decomposition. Diseased plant parts only belong in a guaranteed hot compost. Animal feces from carnivores, dogs, cats, is taboo because of parasites. However, manure from herbivores, horses, chickens, rabbits, is excellent. Avoid treated wood, glossy cardboard, microplastics, and large amounts of ash, which could raise the pH too much. Coal ash is completely unsuitable due to pollutants. Balance and diversity are the strengths of your compost. The more different materials you mix, the more stable the process becomes. Composting is applied microbiology. If you optimize conditions for bacteria and fungi, you receive black gold in return. Humus, nature's most fertile substance. A properly managed compost smells like forest and rain, not like rot. Practically speaking, this means use a composter with a volume of at least 1 cubic meter. A 3-bin system is ideal. 1 bin for collecting, 1 for the hot phase, and 1 for maturation. This way you have a continuous flow and can harvest a batch every 6 to 8 weeks. The location should be in partial shade on natural ground so that soil organisms can migrate in. Compost is not just fertilizer. It improves soil structure, stores water, and sequesters carbon long-term. This is active climate protection on a small scale. Humus-rich soil is resilient to drought and heavy rain. In a time when industrial agriculture is depleting soils, compost is an act of resistance and healing. If you are starting fresh, you can inoculate the pile with a shovel of finished compost to introduce the right microorganisms. After that, the system maintains itself. For problems like stench or lack of heat, simply correct the factors. More brown material for odor, more green material or water for lack of heat. Imagine standing in your garden in the spring. The soil is dark and alive because you have incorporated your own compost. Your plants grow strong and healthy without synthetic fertilizer. Your tomatoes taste aromatic and intense. This is self-sufficiency in its purest form. You have closed the cycle. In the coming years, global systems will continue to come under pressure. Those who learn today to produce their own fertility will be independent. Compost is the foundation. It is not spectacular, but fundamental. It separates those who remain dependent from those who take their freedom into their own hands. Every bucket of waste you transform is a step in the right direction. You don't need a huge area or expensive equipment, only the knowledge and consistency. Start collecting today. Set up your first pile. Experience how waste becomes black gold and how knowledge becomes true power. This is the beginning of your independence. If this story has changed your view of the supposed waste in your garden, Then subscribe to this channel and give this video a like. Here we unearth the history and knowledge that often remain hidden. Plant the future together with us. The next treasure of knowledge will be unearthed very soon.